Thank you for tuning into White Centipede Noise Podcast. Please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. This podcast is made possible by viewer and listener support. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider supporting it at patreon.com/White Centipede Noise. White Centipede Noise is a label and mail order based in Germany, releasing top quality noise on tape, CD, and vinyl. White Centipede Noise is also the premier EU-based distributor of international noise. Visit whitecentipedenoise.com to see available label releases and weekly distro updates. Hello and welcome to White Centipede Noise Podcast. My name is Oscar Brummel. Today joining me is a guy who does very, very progressive power electronics and death industrial, and is also the premier chief audio engineer of the noise scene at the current time. Please welcome Grant Richardson of GNAWED and HEX Audio Labs. Or HEX Labs? Did I mispronounce it?
HEX Lathes is like the label that kind of started with lathe cutting, and now I'm like using HEX Audio Labs as like an all-encompassing business for audio endeavors.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, good morning. Thank you for being with me on this strange day.
Good morning.
Greetings to my hometown. It's cool to be in contact with someone in Minneapolis. So right off the bat, your power electronics industrial project GNAWED. I saw its first iterations probably about 10 years ago or more. You know, when we were both playing a lot of shows in Minneapolis. And it's progressed a lot since then and evolved a lot. Can you tell me a bit about the project and its progression from how it started out and to what it is now?
Yeah, I guess it was GNAWED would have been my first solo live and recording endeavor in noise. And at that time, I was way more interested in playing raw power electronics, high energy. I think my first few releases, I like have harsh noise releases, and like I did a wall mini CD that I'm not proud of, but I think I was just messing around when I first started, and I latched onto something, and I went forward. And progression beyond that, I think, is just doing what I want to hear, you know?
Right. Well, I don't really know about your musical background, but the beginning I felt like had really strong punk power violence kind of roots. And now, and this, you know, it was also reflected in the sound. Like you said, it was very high energy, very raw, very urgent. Whereas GNAWED now is very, very crafted, I don't want to say subdued, but very, very lush in production, very, very fine-tuned. What were your musical roots that kind of got you into noise and power electronics in the first place?
You nailed it with power violence. I think I had bought Thoughtless by Man is the Bastard at Extreme Noise. and I was like, oh, cool, punks can make chirpy sounds, and and it's cool. So yeah, you know, my intro to wanting to play noise was, I guess, realizing that all the weird bastard noise oscillators were like, people thought that was cool, and I was like,
yeah. How does that transition? I mean, how does that blend work? Because I think that somehow Men as the Bastard and Bastard Noise are like the gateway drug for a lot of people in the punk scene, and then it leads them to like Merzbow. I mean, there's often not a lot of crossover, but when that link happens, for a lot of people, it becomes a very obvious gateway. I don't know my question is, I guess, but I mean, it's fascinating because I think everyone has their own kind of gateway, like I say, to noise and power electronics. And that's a very, very strong one. That's a very, very powerful one because that's really brought in a lot of people. And that's a band that still holds a lot of weight and has so much respect. And I don't really know much about them as Man as a Bastard.
right.
Like, I don't really know their music in that context, but
See, I know Man as the Bastard way more than Bastard Noise.
right.
That's Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and they're huge, right? In that world of people who follow power violence, they're like they're huge, right? I mean,
they're kind of founders of a geographical scene situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're highly respected there for sure.
And they've somehow, with us, by no means a mainstream genre, but with a wider genre, they have the ability to capture, I think, a lot of ears and channel a lot of people towards noise. And I think a lot of people come from that background, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, so when I first heard that stuff, I was already like interested in, I guess, sound design, for lack of a better term, not knowing that's what I was interested in at the time. I was into synth sounds and stuff without being really hands-on with them. But once like I said, when I bought that Thoughtless LP, I was like, oh, you can be like one of the members of the band can be a noise person. And that's, not long after I played noise in a sludge band, Endless Bummer.
Yeah, Endless Bummer.
So I played noise in a otherwise traditionally instrumented, heavy doom band.
Was that pre-Nod? I remember that band. Was that before
Yeah,
you started Nod?
that was pre-Nod. So my first live noise performances would have been playing in that band. As a just pure noise,
I remember those. Yeah, I remember that. Super, super loud, crazy loud.
Yeah, there's some stories. I live with Nate, who is in that band right now, and we were reminiscing of one time we had band practice, and we were really loud even in band practice, to the point where a cop came to the house while we were in the basement, and one of our roommates let him in, and he came down in the basement, and there was paraphernalia strewn about and things, and he was just like, hey, you're not in trouble, you guys are so loud, we could hear you from I can hear you from blocks away, I play music. And he is hanging out for like 15 minutes. He tried to play Nate's guitar to show us a riff, but it was all out of tune, detuned, and he was like, if I have to come back here and...
What kind of riff was he trying to play? Like
he got one note in, and it was like tuned to A, and he's like, if I have to come back here and this thing's still out of tune, I'm taking you in. But yeah, that band was fun.
And was that the Rat Hole? Because we've talked about the Rat Hole a bit on previous episodes, and you lived there. Was that at that time you were looking at the Rat Hole?
That would have been before. That would have been, I was living on 3rd Avenue and 33rd Street.
Okay.
At like a punk house.
Right.
But,
And then you moved to the Rat Hole, which for a while was also one of the main places that noise shows were happening in Minneapolis.
mm-hmm.
Otherwise a punk house. Were you were probably the one responsible for setting up those shows and making that possible. Is that correct? Or were there other people involved in that?
Well, so when we moved in there, along the original roommates included Shane and Jeremy from Monsters of Pot.
That's right.
And so Shane was a huge booking force of noise. Right. And he moved to Nebraska, and that's kind of when I took over the reins as far as booking noise shows at the house.
Yeah.
But while he was living there, that was his deal for sure.
Okay, I forgot he lived there. Yeah.
Yeah. Also a member of Endless Bummer.
Coming March 12th in Leiden, Netherlands, Charnel Ground presents Crude Transmissions, Festival of Noise and Heavy Electronics, featuring Wince, Coma Cluster, Misère, Knifed Out Existence, Vincent Dallas, Moosehead, Uitgeschakeld, O Retel Retel, Death Mask, and Hernadode. Also screening Tights Worship, Inside of the Practices of the Rita, a film by Mike McKinley. There will be a large White Centipede Noise merch table, as well as from Records and Things and The Tide of the End. March 12th at Resistor in Leiden. 4 o'clock, €8 entry. So, with GNAWED, in the past several years, you've really refined that sound and concept, and it's been, like I said, several years since you've really honed that in, but particularly I think the album from 2019, or is it 2020? I might be mistaken, but the album Subterranean Rights.
Yeah, I have a hard time remembering because I worked on that for so long. It was that was 2020, yeah.
Subterranean Rights, it came out in 2020 on Cloister.
Right, and yeah. Cloister Malignant.
And Malignant. Yeah. Tell us about that recording process. What went into that album? What was the concept behind that album?
So I like to explore subterranean spaces, extracurricular activities.
Mm-hmm. You have a lot of those.
Yeah. That's sort of definitely an obsession. And,
mm-hmm.
I guess the idea behind that was to exploit the acoustic properties of a lot of the spaces,
mm-hmm.
In a way that was predictable and controllable,
mm-hmm.
like using it as a studio, essentially,
mm-hmm.
unique spaces, but also like getting in the mindset of like where I am. So most of that was just recording without composing a lot of
mm-hmm.
sounds, and then I started composing, and then I go back and track and build from there.
So when you say subterranean spaces, what specifically are you talking about?
Sewers and any tunnel that's below ground. But
what's your process of being down in there? You're in essentially wet, dark spaces full of water, and not just water, right? Am I assuming correctly that there's also waste and sewage?
Yeah, depending on where. That's more like not the spot you hang out, but it's, there's a means to an end, to navigate from one location to another, you might have to traverse something gross.
Yeah. But what are those recording sessions like? Do you find a spot down there is there a lot of room there? Do you have the ability to set up equipment? Are you there for a long period of time? What kind of risks are there of you being discovered? How loud are you being?
So in the recording end of things, I have pretty limited spaces that I go to because those areas are not quiet. Mm-hmm. So, if I'm just going around, I always bring recorder with me or something, just with that, if I'm not planning on doing anything. But the majority of the spaces, however cool they are acoustically, they're not quiet, so it would be really hard to spend any time in there. So there's mm-hmm. a select few quiet spaces that are that are large enough to have cool sounds. or they're long. So I have a few favorites that sound great. And so usually if I'm going to actually do something with something substantial, it's very planned out. Because I have to bring power, lights, plan entrance and, someplace. Yeah.
Are you bringing a generator down there?
No, all battery packs. Just like homemade battery supplies.
And are you traveling around there like in a canoe, or are you walking?
Both. There's one of the places that I like to go to specifically is I generally boat in, but most can be accessed other ways. And then there's even the places that you would boat into, there's walkable. You can get out and walk.
Yeah. And then so when you're set up in there, do you set up speakers that I know you record sounds in there, but are you also amplifying sounds and recording them from a speaker in that
absolutely.
space?
Absolutely. I have a couple large battery powered speakers that I got specifically for that. One is the smaller JBL Bluetooth speakers. I got the party box. They're great. The batteries last about 12 hours. They're loud. Wow. They carry a lot of bass. They're huge.
Yeah.
They don't fit in any normal backpack I have, so I have a duffel bag just for it. But and they're heavy, but they're great. It's a PA, and in those spaces, there's nothing to absorb all that sound because the majority of specifically talking about like a concrete space, you don't need a lot of volume for it to really resonate.
Right. Wow. And you crank it pretty loud down there. That you think it could be heard.
Oh yeah.
By someone on the street.
I hope. I hope someone walks by and hears some I think about that all the time. I hope someone hears this synth drone emanating from a sewer cap, like a manhole cover. It's just some ominous. I hope.
Wow. And then you said you're composing. Are you doing vocals and are you doing single layers for multi-tracking that you then later assemble? Are you doing actual mixing down there? Are you doing any sort of?
Absolutely doing multi-tracking, but I don't.
Yeah.
It's usually with I do all the mixing is happening at home.
Right. Okay.
But I'm it's I might obsess over something and I'm I need this synth sound, and I may have patched that synth in, but I won't record it until I'm down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I figured out the parts that I want, where I want them, for the most part. And then a lot of the assembly is done, at home in a DAW because that's my background, recording. Yep. So.
Do you do that alone? Do you ever have anyone with you that helps out?
Yeah, I've had a few people come help do things. My friend Ian and Dan came and helped me with some camera stuff.
Wow.
But usually I'm kind of a lone wolf in that zone, for sure.
It's probably easier, I suppose. It's probably easier to just keep. You have to be careful also, I'm sure. It's probably easier to do that when you're alone.
Yeah.
Than trying to initiate someone else and make sure they follow the plan.
Right. Another thing is a lot of the spaces I go to, I record impulse responses. If you're familiar with those. Yeah.
Can you tell the folks what that is if they
Yeah. An impulse response is a short you create a short impulse in a room, for instance, a balloon popping or a firework. And then what you're doing is recording the resonance of the space. A hand clap in a stairwell is a good example of that. You have a recorder and you clap your hands and you hear the space echo. well, through the process of convolution, you can recreate the properties of that space and with that decay time relatively accurately. But it's really great to, you can bring home this space and mess around with it later. But to bring that to having someone else, I've recorded those with other people, but any sound can ruin the purity of the decay time, like a joint cracking, a sniffle, anything. So it's like, you got to leave while I do this type quiet.
Yeah. Wow.
So.
your core sound is very death industrial oriented, and this album has been recorded purely in sewers. Do you feel like that's a concept that you're gonna explore further, or is that something you feel like you've exhausted?
Well, no, I'm definitely doing more of that. I'm in the middle of a record now, and it's going slow just because I'm really busy, and I kind of obsess over it for a little while, and that's all I want to do. And right now it's on the back burner because I just have so much on my plate. But exploring those spaces is something I do regularly, whether or not I'm trying to record a record. Yeah. So it's always there. Okay. And I have pretty much have a record completed right now. For the most part, that's, relatively, I mean, it's the same vibe. It's like the psychedelic half sister of Subterranean Rights, for lack of a better term. But
cool. Do you have any other sort of concepts in line with that you want to explore in the future?
Yeah, I sort of.
You're very. I mean, we're going to talk about a little bit about your extracurricular activities, but you're someone who has a lot of passions, hobbies, interests, skills, things like that. I could imagine that, you could be working on something else, or have some of your other obsessions or interests tie into your work.
Yeah, right now I'm into binaural, doing binaural recordings, binaural impulse responses. Binaural is music that's recorded with a microphone that emulates the shape of your head, the spacing of your ears, and it's experienced by listening in headphones. But I've been recording a lot of binaural stuff. Cool. I don't know exactly how that's going to tie into something, but it's gonna.
And do you record that with like a mannequin's head? Like, is that the mannequin's head behind you that I'm seeing, or do you record that in your own in your own head?
That's Sven. That's I made that. It's a binaural microphone.
Can you show that to us? Is that possible? Yeah.
So, yeah, there's some microphone element. This comes out. He's ski mask Sven, because these are really sensitive microphone elements, and they require a windscreen if you're outside. So here's his windscreen.
Cool.
But most I'm using that in places where I can bring that along. But I have these in-ear ones that use your own head and space that are really great. They sound good, and they're portable. So cool. The majority of what I'm doing is in-ear microphones.
Okay, cool. And so binaural is still a stereo mixdown, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's a right and left that somehow emulates the human hearing. But does it have more spatial placement on headphones than like just right and left stereo imaging, or does it have like a?
You don't have the vertical axes, but it's really powerful in the way. How can I explain it? If you've ever worn VR or done like like worn a VR headset, your brain sort of fills in those gaps, and it feels realistic for a moment. You feel like you're in a space. And your brain kind of suspends its disbelief in a certain way, where you kind of are, your brain's like, okay, this is my reality now. I have to make this real.
Yeah.
Binaural sort of does that with your ears. Your brain kind of makes it feel like you're in the environment in a really incredible way. To where like I'll be listening to a field recording that I recorded binaural in my room, alone, no one's at the house. I put my headphones on and I hear like, the keys jingle from my keys in the recording, and I take my headphones off and I look for who's in the room with me, because you believe it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's a very interesting phenomenon. I don't know much about it, but I know of just some even stereo recordings. Like I can remember actually one of my first noise recordings that I can really remember having and listening to was a tape from Peter J. Woods, and I remember listening to it on the bus somewhere, and it was a tape, but I remember he had some sounds that he mixed in some way where it really felt like some of the sound was going behind my head, and with just stereo, no surround sound, of course, just the two channels, and I've always been really fascinated by that mixing technique, and I have no idea how it was done, I guess, but yeah. Yeah, so props to Peter for doing that. I think his sound design skills are very underrated, actually.
For sure.
The thing about podcasts is they're really long, and you may find out that your heroes have dumb voices. Why take the risk? When you read Noise Widow Reluctant Fanzine, you have total freedom to imagine that all the cool guys have calm, deep voices and a general air of insouciance. You can also draw horns and stink lines on the people you don't like with impunity. So turn off that dial, throw your computer or mobile device into the garbage, and crack open your allegedly favorite zine, Noise Widow. It's good.
So you've talked about having a lot of extracurricular activities and interests. I've always been amazed at that since I've known you, that you're always extremely busy. You always have time to help, despite that, and you're always, you've been going to school for various electrical and audio engineering, correct?
Yeah, I'm back in school right now.
Yeah. You have, you're an avid gun collector and shooter. You watch goats now. So tell me about some of the other stuff that you get into that makes up your daily life or your week.
Oh man, right now it's pretty vanilla. I'm in school full time. No goats right now because it's winter.
Okay.
But,
yeah. You had some degree that you were doing online, I think back when it was still kind of like experimental for like MIT, was it? And you were...
Yeah, I did an MIT electronics engineering class. So MIT kind of rolled out this program that was called, I don't know what it is now. I think it was called edX. And it was like, it was a cool movement that's still around, in around 2008, which was the concept was free education, free online classes with curriculum, strict curriculum, like, based from these colleges, usually prestigious tech colleges like MIT, Harvard and stuff. And if you wanted to pay for your degree upon completion, you would receive credit. And was heavily discounted. It's all from home. But I did that. I was in the first MIT class that they did. Now they've been doing it for, I don't know, like 12 years now, maybe. But it was cool. It was hard. It was challenging, but it wasn't anything crazy. I took a few courses, with that. That would have been like 2011 or 12.
And that was training in electronics, not audio, right? That was
right. It's pure engineering, circuit design. And I was also going to the Dunwoody private school here,
right
around that time.
Right.
I think they coincide. I think I was doing both actually, and I was doing electronics at Dunwoody.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you build electronics? Do you build synthesizers? Do you build equipment?
I mean, I used to more, but I'm kind of back. I got a full paid 2-year right now at Hennepin Tech for robotics. So so it's really reinvigorated I get to learn how to solder next week. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, no, it's gotten me really re-excited on building and mostly repairing. I am a hoarder of electronics.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of broken stuff. And so since the beginning of the year, I've really just been cruising through my Horde and
Yeah.
repairing or upgrading or.
Yeah.
Or
You do know
whatever.
how to solder though, right? You were joking. You
Oh
know how
yeah,
to
yeah,
solder.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. For
Yeah.
years. Okay. Good. Yeah.
Yeah, I very much know how to solder. I just replaced the entire signal path capacitors on a set of monitors this weekend,
Wow.
last weekend. So
Killer.
yeah, I want to know if I can test out of this this one of these classes.
Yeah.
Because hey, fundamentals are important.
Yeah.
You know. So
But when you know them, then you've been doing fundamentals for a long time. I mean, I know you've repaired things for me back 10 plus years ago. Like, you know, you've been at it. And then you also worked at a Halloween props factory, right?
yeah,
Did that fall apart with COVID, or is that what's going on?
I got furloughed / laid off and spent a lot of time at home.
Yeah.
But that was a cool job. I did a lot of electronics and worked
What
on
were you doing
basically.
exactly there?
I was doing light fabrication. When I started there, I was doing light fabrication for a haunted house prop making company, and that company sort of served as a all-in-one shop for the haunted house industry. So if you run a haunted house, you can buy anything you need in that department from the company I work for. But I was they would resell other props, but I was, a fabricator doing animatronics for and non-animatronics, just props that were made in-house that were sold by that company.
So like when a skeleton like jumps out of a grave kind of thing?
Yep. You make those. We'd make a lot of the parts to make that. If you wanted to make one yourself, you could buy the mechanism that would carry the skeleton out of the grave from us. So that would be, welding, motor or pneumatic based little mechanisms for motion, which is kind of why I'm in I have some education and experience in the robotics industry, but it's the same world, but without the Halloween mask. What I'm going to school for now. So it's, it's hydraulic pneumatic motor systems that are being driven by a computer based on sensor inputs, which is all haunted houses are.
Cool. And are you also involved in the programming of those things in the software side of it?
Yeah, it's pretty in the haunted house world. It's really raw and simple. Or it can get more complicated, but yeah, towards the end of working there, I actually was doing like customer support for that company, answering emails, tech emails, and handling the brunt of that. And then I was basically R&D for that company, coming up with new things.
What was your takeaway on the haunted house industry? Because you were going to conventions and stuff like that, right? Like that was because you were going to conventions and things like that. You were pretty involved.
Oh yeah.
What's that world like?
Imagine a warehouse or like a convention center full of dudes and girls, just full of people with t-shirts with like jack-o'-lanterns on them. They've got a Jack Skellington beanie and like Nightmare Before Christmas tattoos, and they're like really excited about skeletons.
Yeah.
And it's, it's cool. But yeah, I don't know. It's a cool industry to be in for sure. Very entertaining.
This episode of White Centipede Noise Podcast is brought to you by Screamin' Ride Distro and Absurd Exposition Label, Montreal-based source for experimental electronics, harsh noise, etc. Over 1,600 items in stock on all formats. Media mail shipping to the USA and affordable international shipping. Forthcoming tapes from the Rita, Mott and Violent Shogun, Andrew Nolan Misery Engine split, Neural, Hermit Chick White split, and Alex York, plus an expanded double LP reissue of Merzbau's 1998 psych noise mantra Aqua Necromancer. Visit screamandride.com and or absurdexposition.bandcamp.com.
So you were traveling a lot, pre-pandemic. I know you were oftentimes hopping on flights on the weekends and going to play shows and also to see shows a lot, like kind of around the country. That was your, you were really active getting around and traveling. What are those out of town experiences like for Gnawed? Like people's reception to Gnawed, or what kind of connections have you made through those travels?
I don't know. That's probably the core of. I've always taken touring to be pretty connection building. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think the majority of my more recent travels would just be to reconnect with pre-existing friends, but inevitably you meet people and do things. But yeah, I'd fly out on the weekend and come back red eye Monday morning and go straight to work.
And what was the reception to Gnawed, international or nationally like? Because without the, I feel like in Minneapolis you have such a rich. People have such a rich image of you and know you so well because you're involved in so many different things. And also Gnawed, is that the same when you go to a different city where they don't have necessarily this background of your activities because you're so active in Minneapolis, but they just know you maybe for the project? And how is that usually received?
Usually it's I'm always blown away. Not to discredit or say anything negative about playing in Minneapolis, but people have seen me play, for the most part. So Gnawed's playing again. Cool. Sick. But I go somewhere where, I don't play regularly and am received pretty well,
Yeah. Cool.
So it's rewarding and it makes me want to travel more.
Yeah. You were also in Sweden, right?
Yeah. I came out I was just going to come to Cloister's 5-year.
Right.
As a spectator, and he set up a show on Halloween in Stockholm, which was awesome.
Cool.
That was cool. Played with Suit, Crew Incendia, and Alphamania at Filkingen. So it was welcome to the show. Here's your pre-show.
You also worked on Jason Krumer's a couple of his recent albums, the self-titled album and Services Rendered, I think, as well. I'm not quite positive, but you were doing a lot of work on those. What were you doing on those albums?
Well, with the self-titled, he came up here and recorded at the house here for a couple of days, and just generated a bunch of source, and then he arranged that. I did a lot of mulching.
Were you recording him? Were you the engineer for those sessions, kind of thing?
Yeah, and I have a bunch of synths and pedals and other equipment, junk metal, contact mics and stuff. So he was using that, and then we just recorded it in my system. For a I mean, he has source from all over on that record, but that was for and I don't want to speak for him, but it seemed like it was kind of like, okay, we're going to do this, and this is my motivation factor to get the ball rolling. Penciled in the dates. Now I'm doing it. We're good, and it was awesome. Jason's the shit, so cool. We're hanging out half the time. It was good.
Yeah, nice.
But he had me do a lot of just editing and for lack of a better term, source mulching up here's this source, which I love doing that. I love okay, I'm going to make this completely different sound out of what you've given me based on some less less, here's your creative freedom to create the sound, more, here's your technical box, and I want this sound. I want this idea to be.
Yeah.
So I'm working within the confines of specs or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
So that was more the services I rendered for services rendered.
Sure.
And then I mixed one of the tracks. Did the mix on it.
And when you say mulching the source, what kind of processing are you doing? What are your techniques?
I mean, just shifting, running it through different effects. A lot of times if I want it, I did a lot of like, at least for my own work, if I want to take some sound and make ambient low frequency bed, I might play it at half speed, run it through a bunch of reverb and then distortion and then reverb again, and then it's this stuff like that, just completely morphing a sound into I want a low rumble, or I want a shimmer synth sound, and going through whatever processes to get to that sound.
Yeah.
But using specific source.
Okay.
Not just anything, using this is the source that we're using for this type thing.
Did you take them to any spaces, like any of your underground spaces, or any reverb special rooms? You're from here. Do you know those big domes on 94 in Dowling in North? Yeah.
We went in there.
Cool. I've never been in there.
They're going to tear them down soon.
Oh.
The city owns them. But they're insane. It's insane. You're in a concrete semisphere that's hundreds of feet across. It's completely reflective. It's over 30 seconds reverb time. It's insane.
Wow.
So I was like, you're going to these. I think he was like, what the hell? And then he was like, wow. But we went to I love bringing people who are, in town for a moment that are even vaguely interested in weird sounds. So, all the noise homies that I can, you bring there, and it's always mind blowing. People are always just like floored at this space.
Sick. Yeah, you told me about that actually. When I visited last was the first time I became really aware of it, and you were like, it was a really cold winter, and you were like, yeah, you got to go down there and you got to drive in and then park and like make sure no one sees you. And then you go in this door, and I was alone with Pasha, and I was like, we actually drove down there, and I was like, I don't really know which place he's talking about, and I don't know if I'm like have the guts to just like break into one of these giant semispheres without Grant.
It's gone through so many changes as far as like its security level to where it's the Wild West now, and it's like there's like sketchy people hanging out there, and like it's all sorts of like reckless lawlessness. It's awesome.
Wow. As I said in the intro, you've kind of become the premier audio engineer and mastering engineer in noise in the past few years. You have been doing an insane amount of mastering jobs for noise releases, both big and small in terms of, incapacitance reissues and things like that, to someone wants their short thing for a tape or for their Bandcamp mastered. You've been doing that too. I mean, your name has been around on so many releases in the past few years. How did you get into doing mastering like that, and how has your process and journey with mastering also evolved?
I don't know what, I never thought I'd be mastering, because I had toured some mastering facilities a while ago, like a decade ago, and I was blown away by the the precision, it's intimidating. You go into one of those like a really nice mastering control room, and it's like, wow, the level of care and subtle changes this person is making are undetectable by me, at that point in my life. But so my like audio engineering life comes from recording bands and dealing with the bands, and in the DIY self-release demo world, there's no, a mastering engineer is like, this concept that's, removed from what I'm doing here in my DIY world. That's for, big production. And that's the idea that I sort of maintain. But I'm mixing for people and sort of wearing two hats where I wouldn't have considered what I was doing, a couple decades ago as truly mastering, but I'm doing the best that I could as a mixing engineer in that world. But I had mastered some things back here and there whenever I got the chance, but I never put myself out there as. I think I did that. Did I technically master that grain belt CD?
Yes, you did.
I think okay, yeah. So Sam threw me a couple things. He threw me the Cherry Point Misery Guts disc to do the remaster that back when that came out. Couple things here and there. Mostly it would just be for friends. They were like, "Oh, you have an ear. This is." They come over to the house and they're like, "Let's use your studio and like use your system and listen to these tracks on a studio monitors." Yeah. And I think just being in that world frequently enough kind of led me to do it more and more.
This is a really maybe dumb sounding question, but I think it's important. I think you can give a lot of game out right now and a lot of great information that a lot of people are wondering about. What exactly is mastering?
So I guess traditionally the concept of mastering is preparing audio material for its final destination in the best shape that you can get it in. What a mastering engineer is actually going to do is going to be up to the engineer and the client. So maybe the client is like, traditionally I'm done with it. Traditionally it's like, the mixing engineer would be done with a mix. The mix is as good as he can get it. Let's send it off to the mastering engineer to a little column A, polish it up and make it sound a little sweeter if that's what we want. And B, prepare it for CD, streaming, vinyl, cassette, etc. Based on those formats requirements. I think the general term that gets thrown around the most about mastering, in my experience, is making it sound good, making it sound better. And so I get people who want both or one or the other. So some people are like, this is how it should sound.
Yeah.
This is gonna go on vinyl.
Yeah.
So you need to prepare it for vinyl, and I'm not sonically sweetening it. I'm just doing the technical, the things that I think will make it transferred to vinyl the best.
Yeah.
Other people, they're like, do your thing, man. Like, let's make it sound sick, So it's in my definition, it could be either. It's, polishing a mix and preparing it if that's what's desired, and preparing it for its in its best shape to go out into the world on whatever format.
And you're always receiving just the stereo mix, right? You're not receiving different elements.
Like that would be mixing.
Right, exactly. So that's,
in my opinion,
that's the difference. I think would be good to.
So
maybe...
I do mix for people. Not as often as I'd like to, honestly, because that's really in my background. Is full band, massive multi-track, tracking, recording, and mixing. And I still I don't have, like, my house now isn't really well set up as a studio that can accommodate a band. I mean, it is, but the basement sounds bad, and there's a lot of extra work on my end because it's not set up as a permanent studio. So I really, since I've lived here, I've only recorded select few bands the bands that I really want to work with.
Yeah.
But I want to mix. I love mixing.
Yeah. A quick question about vinyl, for me to clear this up, and I think maybe for other people. When you talk about mastering vinyl, is what you are doing, is that truly mastering, or is that like pre-mastering? Because my understanding was that the actual mastering is done as the person is cutting the record, and maybe like the mastering that like a mastering engineer like you would do is to kind of get it as close as possible to what they can work with best. Or what is that process like? Can you demystify that a little bit?
Yeah, the term mastering is just used in two different ways. Disc mastering would be cutting a lacquer, or direct to metal if it's direct metal.
Right.
That would be preparing the master, for pressing. Those, like lacquer, I'm going to refer to them as lacquer cutters. Lacquer cutters want a professionally mastered version of the material, specifically set up for vinyl, so they have to do less. And I mean, not just that, they want it There's a lot of issues with the frequency domain that vinyl, its limitations that need to be thought of. High frequency and low frequencies, phase issues. Yeah. Over compression and limiting, too loud, like a loud file. They want that stuff set up for them,
right? By
someone. So it's both mastering. I am mastering for vinyl. Yes. They're doing vinyl mastering.
Sure.
The people that do that vinyl cutting have the skills and knowledge to do that, but generally they're not going back and forth with the artist to get a product that everyone agrees on is good.
Right. Right. Especially if you're going with like one of the more kind of factory style pressing plants that most people are using and can afford. I assume they have probably some sort of presets that they know kind of make sure their technical specs are correct, and then they probably cut whatever comes out of that, right?
Yep. Yeah. Like larger play. I don't know now who's. I brought up Sam was over here last night. We were listening. Sam from Phage. We were listening to some test cuts at the house, to see, and I've been pretty impressed with some of the test cuts I've been listening to lately. They've been sounding like, really good. So whoever is cutting those, he's got a specific engineer that the pressing plant he goes to sends them to that he prefers, and that studio or whatever has been doing a really good job.
Cool.
I don't know if that answered your question.
No, yeah, for sure it does. When you are mastering someone's work and you're in some way imparting, of course you're doing a technical job, but it's like you're still operating in subjective world, so your ear is still a part of it, and your own tastes or ideas are a part of it. Have you ever had anyone like not be happy with the direction you're going and want something different, or take it back, the mastering job or anything like that?
I mean, I've had people say, "Oh, whoa, slow down on the low end" or something like that. For sure. And I frankly wish I would get more of that. I get a lot of like, "Sounds good, man. We're good."
Yeah.
And that if you're the end, I want to, that's the goal, right?
Right.
But I always tell people to never hesitate to have me change anything, because that's the point.
Right.
So yeah, no, I've definitely, I think I know the people that I work with frequently enough to have communication with them in a way where, I know if we're not going to specify stuff, I know I can usually guess pretty well what they want out of this. Mm-hmm. And I also get a lot of trust from people that I've worked with before, because they're like, you did this other thing really great. Yeah. So I'm just going to trust you.
Yeah. Do you have any advice to artists giving you material, or things that you wish people knew more about, or knew more in their recording or mixing process to get better sounding audio, or at least prepare you for what you need to do more with it?
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing would be, a little bit of headroom. Like in the harsh noise specific world, everything is, most stuff I get is just slammed. And people want, they want, and that's fine. That's what it's what the material is. But I feel like, people might give me a really loud file, and it's technically too loud for CD. Yeah. And then so the product that I'm going to give them to approve for CD is going to sound to them weaker and quieter, because it's not as loud. Yeah. So, headroom's great. I feel like I'm waging a one-man war against intersample peaks in CDs. And I don't think they're inherently the devil, but I think it's an not understood topic.
What is that exactly?
So 0 decibels is the ceiling of the loudest you can make a normal digital file in the type of digital files we use and put on CDs. Yeah. 0 decibels is the ceiling. It's the loudest it can technically be. Digital files are all zeros or ones. So if it's all ones, it can't be louder than however many bits are there for information. I just messed my thing up. So what an intersample peak is what the playback system would see as exceeding that level, even though it's technically not. So the digital converters, digital to analog converters in a CD player, playing back a CD with these intersample peaks is going to distort. Mm-hmm. The converters in the CD player are now adding distortion to the CD. So you're getting added distortion. So if you just wanted this harsh ripping as loud as possible, cool, let the end users' systems distort too. Cool. There's some other implications with CD playback with them, and it's just not understood. Yeah. So I feel like the most time explaining something in mastering is me explaining what these are, the implications of writing a CD that loud, and why I made the decisions that I did to reduce the volume and not include, intersample peaks. Yeah.
Do people usually get it, or they usually kind of, do they do you get pushback from it?
Yeah. But it's cool. I get it. I understand, because it's not the end of the world. Like, lots of CDs have intersample peaks. Yeah. We're just operating in the average sound level of a harsh noise CD exceeds anything that you can read in any sort of book about proper mastering techniques or something. It's up there. So, and that's okay if you want to exploit the medium, but if you want someone to listen to the CD and it sound exactly like the material you're presenting, that those shouldn't exist. You shouldn't have them there. Yeah. And if it's really crazy, some CDs can have playback errors. Right. And as an engineer, I don't want to be delivering a bad product here.
Yeah. What about just general production techniques of people. I mean, you use DAWs, and one thing I've been kind of aware of lately and kind of trying to, I guess, spread a little bit, or at least make people aware of, is just the idea of audio or analog to digital conversion when recording. Because I think a lot of people, it's even something it took me a while to figure out that this is something that's important, like to use a proper analog audio interface. I think a lot of people go straight into the headphone jack or the microphone jack on the laptop. Is that an issue? Does that cause digital distortion that you can hear, or sound quality issues that you can hear?
Yeah, I mean, it's all going to be based on the converter. You get weird oscillations, and you'll literally be able to hear low quality converters. Converters are great, and they're like, now that the technology just gets better. Just a dedicated interface is inexpensive, and it can, if you're not accustomed or using one, it can like vastly improve, quality, especially if you're doing something dynamic or you have subtle quiet parts. That's when you'll really hear good converters.
Right.
The difference, because you can hear a bad converter. It sounds dirty.
Yeah.
And preamps. Next step would be, I think preamps and converters are huge, but those are both in your average audio interface that includes decent enough preamps and nowadays great converters.
Right. I'm sure it's gotten much, much better. I think the one I'm using is probably about 10 years old, but it's pretty decent. But I'm sure the new ones that are coming out now are light years ahead of what they were then.
You can
for
spend
the price.
You can spend a lot of money on them, but they're they just get better because it's that technology is just always improving.
Yeah.
It's easier to produce the circuits for cheaper every year.
Right.
So the low end quality of low end audio interfaces is just always improving.
Yeah.
So even the budget ones that you can buy now are great.
Yeah.
They're good. They're good quality.
Yeah.
Good enough.
Do you still notice pushback or criticism against using DAWs? Like Pro Tools? I mean, I remember back in the day before I remember people used to be like, fuck, I don't want that Pro Tools sound.
Right. Well,
what's that all about? Do you think it's still going on?
I get it. I think it's Pro Tools definitely got the stigma there. I think is there's no more talent in the artist end of things. You can fix anything in post production.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that is like blaming a hammer for the condominium on your block.
Right.
It's a tool. It's a tool that can be used, however.
Yeah.
I have gripes with Pro Tools, but those aren't the same. Not for the same reason.
Yeah.
I use Pro Tools for like 15 years exclusively.
Yeah.
And I'll never, if I can help it, I'll never open that program again.
What do you use now? Reaper. Okay. I've heard that
all day. Reaper.
Yeah. For some reason I didn't realize Reaper was available for Mac, but it is. So I was just actually looking at it the other day, and I'm going to try that out soon, because I've been using Pro Tools also, and I have I have Pro Tools 10, which is full of glitches and bugs. It's super out of date. And half the lists don't load anymore, but I know from memory what's there, so it's definitely sketchy. I've been thinking about switching to Reaper.
If you are if you're not sure, you can just pull up a Pro Tools skin theme. Mm-hmm. They're called. You can go download a Pro Tools theme for Reaper, and it'll emulate Pro Tools while you get your bearings.
Oh, cool.
So there's no reason not to get it. Reaper is great because it's customizable. Anything that you don't like or want to see or don't want to see or want to change, you can.
Cool.
It's completely customizable. And there's a great online community filled with resources, great tutorials.
Cool.
it's technically not free, but it's free.
Yeah.
It's free to download and try, and when the demo period expires, Reaper doesn't, the company doesn't cripple the software.
Okay.
So it continues to function, and then they ask you to pay the money.
Okay.
Which you should if you like it.
Yeah.
$60 for the program.
Whoa, that's good.
Yeah.
Crazy. I don't remember what Pro Tools was, but it was stupid expensive.
Yeah, also, I will just say, I don't want to sit here and talk about why I don't like Pro Tools forever, but Reaper is so, if you don't have like a lightning fast computer and that's an intimidating or a prohibitive issue with not running stuff, Pro Tools might bog a computer down but Reaper runs really lightly on computers. It doesn't take a lot of computing power to run and process. It's pretty streamlined and efficient.
Cool. What's HEX? What's your lathe label all about? Tell me about your lathe cutter.
So, my neighbor, Grant, I don't know if you know Graham Baldwin. He used to live.
I think
he's in Thebes. He was a guy in town.
Yeah.
That a bunch of people know.
Yeah.
He moved out of town, and when he moved out, he had a bunch of lathes that I wasn't intending on buying, but I did. The price was right, and he was moving. So I didn't even think I was going to dive into that world, but here I am. So yeah, I bought his. He ran what was it? 2208 Records was his lathe cutting company.
Okay.
I have to remember because that's his address. He lives across the alley.
Okay.
Or lived across the alley, and I'm on. He lived out in 2208 across the alley. I think that's 2208. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Anyways, 2208 Records.
Yeah.
He cut lathes for he had a lathe cutting service.
Mm-hmm.
That he cut some noise stuff. He cut all sorts of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think it. I was like, okay, yeah, I can't not buy this. And then I started cutting, and it was addicting. And
Right.
I got really into it for a few years.
Cool.
And I had some equipment failures and some things and various setbacks and hurdles to where I'm trying to pivot my setup out of more of like a hobbyist cutting setup and into something that is actually makes economic sense for a cutting service or some sort of production.
Sure.
Because it's incredibly it's so time consuming.
Yeah.
And there's so many things can go wrong. Everything has to be right
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah.
For a good cut.
Yeah.
At least with my setup and how it is.
Yeah.
There's so many variables.
Yeah.
But
I
it's
remember,
awesome.
Yeah, I remember when you first got it, he told you, I think, never tell anyone you have it, or never agree to like do people's lathes or something like that. What have you?
Whoops.
have you rethought that? I mean, have you been doing lathes for other people? Because he made basically saying that everyone's going to ask you to do lathes on it. Has that been the case?
I think it was like a parting piece of advice.
Yeah.
Because he came over and cut some records with me and showed me, and I just tried to absorb his knowledge.
Yeah.
And just listened to all of his advice. And as he's leaving, or I don't remember how the conversation went, but he did mention, he said, "Don't let anyone know you have it." And I get it, because everyone wants a cut, and it's, that could be your life.
Yeah.
And I think I can find my goal is to find a balance where I can do it and be okay with it not. Because, yeah, if I have an equipment failure right now and there's a pending orders or something, like, I just have to say sorry. Wait time could be 2 years.
Right.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah.
Just because that's where the level that my personal setup is at.
Sure.
That's an exaggeration, but
Sure. Have you been doing lathes for other people?
I've only been cutting a few things. I'm, you know, really only because I've been, you know, don't have a full-time job, would be, doing blue can crossing, cutting for Stepan.
Okay, that was my question. If that was you.
Yeah, I've been cutting those. But that's the only, like, I've cut a couple others here and there, but that's the only, I cut one for Cloister for the 5-year.
Mm-hmm. Was it that crazy Trepannerings ritual one with the blood splatter?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
And that's where I guess working at a Halloween place comes in, because I got to make a blood formula. And
killer.
Spray it with, you know. But yeah, it was a one-sided 10-inch, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't. It's been something I haven't been. I'm not like hanging up the label or anything, but it's not something I focused on, and not something I have any pending material that needs to come out or anything like that. I want to. I finally have a ton of blank discs and like ready to go, but I'm back in school.
Yeah.
I'm mastering pretty much full time.
Yeah.
And you know, gotta force time into it.
How do you get it all done? How many hours of sleep do you get a night? Because you have so much going on, and so just the mastering jobs alone are insane.
Well, I don't watch movies, and I don't play video games, and I obsess over stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's.
I still feel like you must have more than 24 hours in a day. You must have like 30 somehow.
I wish I had 30 a day. I would love that. You know, I wish days were 30 hours long.
A question I ask everyone is, what are your top 5 noise industrial power electronics releases of all time?
Man, I'm so bad at reaching from the void and narrowing down, but the top 5 records. I see. All I've been doing is listening to like what I've been mastering.
Yeah. That must be tough. I mean, even doing a distro, I spend most of my time, unless I get really on a different bent and like just be like, fuck that. I spend most of my time listening to stuff that comes through, you know, just because I want to I want to hear it before I send it out, you know? And so I can imagine doing mastering where you're really having to listen. It's hard to have time for listening for pleasure.
Yeah. I mean, lately it's like I listen to like just chill background synth wankery to like tune out. But I mean, I got plenty of records, but, Progredo Mort, however you say that, the Marco Corbelli is like that's my favorite, like Corbelli record. I'd put that in top for sure. Anything by Vivenza. Some Brighter Death Now is, you know, had a big influence on me. Temptations is probably my favorite. I don't know. I just keep going to things that I've worked on recently instead of like things in my.
Well, my next question is top 5 of the last year. So you can.
Okay. I mean, a lot of those are going to be reissues because I've gotten to do some really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Reissues.
Yeah, you've had access to crazy stuff. I mean, that's.
Yeah, and there's crazy stuff that's not out yet.
I'm sure.
Too,
yeah, I mean,
So I don't want to kiss and tell about anything, but Evil Moisture GAC was one of those. That was awesome. That was awesome to be able to work on. From original master cassette and the whole, that was cool. most of the stuff that I'm excited about is, at least that in the last year, that is stuff that I've worked on because I haven't been as in tune with other stuff, regrettably.
Well,
but it's a lot of Phage stuff.
Yeah.
Too,
for sure, you do a ton of Phage stuff.
So much.
But so still on your all times though, is GAC one of your all times? Is that?
I don't think I ever thought it would be, but that was so awesome that it might be.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think
number
that's
5 all time in the genre.
Man, I don't.
Last one
in the genre, like greatest. Yo, I got to shout out Control Natural Selection.
Very good.
For personally,
definitely great stuff. And
yeah, I guess.
Best wishes to Thomas, and hoping him all the best as he battles cancer.
Beside You in Strength is a benefit compilation for Thomas Garrison of Control. It features artists such as GNAWED, Like Weeds, Sickness, Subclinic, The Vomit Arsonist, and many, many more. All proceeds are donated to him as he fights cancer. Visit chtonicstreams.bandcamp.com. That's CHTHONICSTREAMS.bandcamp.com.
And then tell me your top 5 of the past year. So, I mean, maybe just it's going to be things that came through your studio that you're working on, or if you can think of anything outside of that realm. But new stuff, new projects, new releases.
Like Weeds stuff, the LP for Phage. Like I'm loving the anything new Like Weeds. I'm all about right now.
Cool, I can't wait to hear that
for sure. GAC, the Evil Moisture GAC. I was really stoked about the Phage CD, the Commuter. The
Commuter FD, right?
Southeast Industrial disc. I thought that was incredible. There's I really like that type of field, like obvious field recording work, and that's and I don't think that's unique to that release, but it's so themed in a way that I think is super appropriate to the sounds, and it's you read the titles and you're like, yep. I think that release really did what it sought out to do and did it really well. The Serration LP on Cloister, I thought was really great. This is just stuff that I've worked on because I had so much time with
That's
them.
legit. I mean,
there's so much. The Regisphere double CD on Phage again. I think I feel like not enough people love Regisphere.
Yeah, it's definitely definitely underrated project.
Yeah, and seeing that come out was I think it was awesome. Yeah. I think it's a great disc.
Cool.
It's a great collection.
Yeah.
I don't know how many that was. That was 5.
I think that's 5. Yeah, that's 5. You used GAC on all time and on new, but that's.
Oh, I didn't mean to slip it into the all time, but maybe it should stay.
Okay. I thought that's what you meant.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Well, cool. I'll let you go with that. That's a good
all
list.
right. Cool.
So this year, the last few years have been crazy. No one has really been able to see what's going to happen, and we've been thrown into a world of chaos, but also a world of noise. This coming year is shaping up to also look very unpredictable and strange. But what do you have going on? What do you have planned this coming year in terms of your projects or musical and artistic activities?
So I'm back in school. I started school. I'm so far. It's free to me through the program I'm in. So if I hate it, I'm gonna leave and not feel like I am out anything. Right. But I'm so far enjoying it. Yeah. And so that's gonna take up a lot, being a full-time student. And so I'm kind of juggling that and trying to take mastering seriously. And I still have to find a balance with my own creative stuff, because definitely in the last year I did a lot of recording, but I haven't I don't want to force anything out, and I only want to work on my own music when I'm obsessed and want to completely let it take over. And so I have all the stuff ready to go, but it's on the back burner because I haven't gotten to that point yet. So we'll see. Yeah. I think the summer looks good. I think I'll have a lot more time this summer, hopefully.
Are you going to be working with goats again this summer?
I think so. The option's there. It's a cool part-time gig for working with a good dude. So I'm sure he wants me to work. he needs the help. Yeah. So I'm sure I will. But yeah, I don't know. Everything's uncertain, and I'm just kind of keeping pace. Yeah.
Like you always do.
No live. I actually did play a live show last fall. Out of town. A couple. I played with Sam in Fargo, and then I played as GNAWED in San Francisco.
Oh, cool.
But I have no out of town plans. Okay. And I'm probably going to keep it that way for the foreseeable future. Sure. Short term, Yeah. If things come up, cool, but I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see.
Probably chilling on that.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to
thanks for having me.
Talk to me. And it was great to hear from you, and thank you for sharing your wisdom, as you always do. And take care, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Take care, man.
Thanks again for tuning into White Centipede Noise Podcast. Head over to the Patreon for more, including private episodes of Noise on the Run, exclusive photos, video, and audio related to the show, and discounts at the White Centipede Noise mail order. Your support is extremely appreciated and vital to keep the show going.